Councillors, just to let you know how I'm thinking of carrying on.
Carry on.
If you just, with your indulgence, I thought what we'd do is I'll do the amendment, like we've got the UAGC, I've got amendment, foreshadowed amendment. Depending on the voting of those, I will then put the UAGC bit, and then we'll go on to the interim transport levy. Can we work through that way? Are you happy with that?
That's great.
And then at the end I'll put the whole lot together. But that way we sort of tick off the bits and pieces as they go.
Madam Chair, just for those of us that want to be able to make telephone calls and return information, can you just give us some indication of when you are planning to take the next break, that we can plan our afternoon accordingly? Okay,
so what I thought we'd do is we'd go, it's up to you guys, and we'll go through the amendments that I've got, and then break for lunch. So, I mean, I can't give you a time because I think that's the best way. And then we'll come back and you can all do your speeches and debate, and then I'll put it, okay? And then we'll take a short break and then we go into governing body. Okay. People happy with that?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, right. So really the timing is in your hands, how long you want to spend on amendments and how long you want to give your speeches. Okay.
Madam Chair, can it be noted, because there is some political consideration with TRI and the Parks Committee next week, and there has been a gap in some information. There is a decision about whether it's appropriate or not appropriate to receive a public presentation. I may need to leave the chamber for some time for that to be resolved. So if I am not
understand
here,
that
thank you very
issue
much.
very much, Councillor Fletcher, and the advice that we're getting on that. Right, so the First Amendment, moved by Councillor...
Point of order, Madam Chair. Could I get an answer to my question about Auckland Transport, please?
Richard.
Thanks. Look, I've been back through my board books, and the previous comment stands really. There was no board resolution to the effect of seeking this extra money, but it was discussed at the board level in the context of the budget discussions. So the board's aware of it.
So there was no formal resolution of the Board of Auckland Transport seeking $80 million from Auckland Council. Why not?
Councillor, we don't have why not. Thank you, Richard. You answered your question. Right, moving right on, I have two amendments. I've got amendment from Councillor Wood, seconded by Councillor Stewart. If this one fails, there is another one, foreshadowed. So, moved by Councillor Wood, seconded by Councillor Stewart, amendment that the UAGC set at 500. Now, Councillor Wood, over to you.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and I was actually very heartened when this committee moved that the consultation on the Uniform Annual General Charge would be up to $650, and we went out on that. And I'm also heartened today to hear the comments of the Mayor in relation to us. Well, he wears a regional hat, and I'd ask the councillors and the Independent Maori Statute Board members to also put on a regional hat, because this is a matter of regional importance, the application of the Uniform Annual General Charge. And I've also heard it said that, we shouldn't be changing anything this year. Well, I think the time has arrived when we need to start making a move to increase the Uniform Annual General Charge, because I think it's one of the issues that is making it more difficult for us to look credible in the eyes of many of our ratepayers out there in Struggle Street. And there are a lot of people out there who are finding it quite difficult to, who are asset rich, cash poor, and they're finding it difficult to pay those rates. And we have our rates going up, as the Mayor indicated this morning, and we've been spending a lot on, especially on transport infrastructure, and that has had an impact, obviously a serious impact on the increase in rates. And also, the revaluations, the move to capital valuation, but the revaluations last year, that's had an impact right across the Auckland region, and it's in many. And as you've noticed in the news, many suburbs have now moved into that 1 million plus value for residential properties. So I think it's timely that we do move on the uniform annual general charge. And Councillor Stewart and myself, we've put up this amendment that it moves to $500. It's only a small incremental change from the $394, $106 increase. I estimate it's around about 15-16% of what we could have it up to of the rate take, and it's only half the level that we could go up to, which is the 30% in the statute. So, councillors, I think that this is timely. Councillor Cashmore, it's probably an area that you would be interested in, that rural farm properties under this higher UAGC would go down, so they'd be better off under a higher UAGC. But overall, the increase is not great as money. The changes are not great. They're only pretty small. $1 a week more for the properties 500 to 750,000. No change very little change between 750 and $1 million in that range, and probably $1 a week increase over that, but in the $1 million properties. So, as I said, it's a start. Councillors are saying we'll do this in increments. I think the time has come to start the change, and I think that this is the time that we should do it, and I ask you to support this change to $500. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stewart.
Yeah, no, I totally support this, and I think if we don't move to the 500, I think for those that are really struggling, as Councillor Wood said, or even have rental properties, that the rental properties will end up they'll have to cover their costs from somewhere. So it doesn't matter whether you're renting a property, you own a property, or whatever. I think we need to set it at the 500.
Thank you. Member
Yes, Chair. This has to be seen in the scope of the whole package. The day that you start to unbundle the package that's been presented, you start to unpick the lot. The problem with the UAGC, on behalf of the people we would advocate on behalf of, is that it's a regressive tax package. The reason it is that is a proxy for UAGC would be a GST. It has immediate flow-through effects and pass-on effects. And the people that are least able to set off this tax are fixed income peoples or low income peoples. And in terms of the strike at $500, it tips the cart in favour of the well-off. And if you look at the total rate strike, the rationale for the general strike, which is the rate, you have to look at it as a package in its entirety. The general rate strike, by difference, is able to be absorbed in a different way. So when we used to do a lot of this work at Finance and Expenditure in the Parliament, etc., it did come down to the universality of a rate strike. Now, the difficulty you've got in balancing a number of these issues is the competing interests, of course, of your rural peoples. And then there's an argument that rural peoples, particularly on the margins of the city boundaries, are sitting on a gold mine and should be charged a windfall tax as soon as the boundary moves, because it's land banking, right? So there's a whole bunch of land bankers that hide under a different tax rate. So what you've got to try and do as best as possible is to get a rate package or a tax package that is universally smoothed as possible. And then secondly, ensuring that in that smoothing of that package, that unintended consequences or perverse results are leavened on those that are least able to absorb them. And so if there are other amendments foreshadowed driving the UAGC up, that actually is a penalty on a certain grouping of Aucklanders, and you can categorise them in quite large numbers. And a number of them, by dint of just history, regretfully, are sitting on a huge equity that they can't release because their elders sitting in their family houses, which are worth a bomb. Your argument would be they should sell up and get out. I think there's some signs that's happening. But the point is, this UAGC driving up like this has a perverse impact on all rental peoples. And on that basis, it should be capped at the lower rate that has been expressed in the Mayor's recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Casey.
Just to give a forewarning that if this fails, I'll be moving one to reduce it to 350. And that's because if you look at page 96, you'll see the responses of local boards, and the majority of them, 12, support it staying the same, which is the Mayor's proposal. But since Councillor Wood's taken the opportunity to try and increase it, I will take the opportunity to support the Puki Tapapa local board and the Mangere Otahuhu local board, who wanted it reduced to 350. So, George, just to let you know that fair is fair here, this is the way to do it. I think you will lose, and I'll certainly be putting up the alternative.
Thank you. Councillor Watson.
Yeah, thank you. I certainly appreciate the sentiment that's behind this amendment, but in this instance, and also hopefully in the instance of the transport levy, I'm going to try and be consistent. The level of support in the consultation for an increase just wasn't there. It was only 33%. This time, and I know and I agree with people in the past, people haven't understood what the UAGC conceivably means for them, but this time it was spelt out pretty clearly in the options there that if you go for a higher one, better off properties will benefit, and vice versa for a lower one. So it was stated pretty clearly. And I certainly was quite willing to abide by what came back in terms of consultation, and in my particular local board areas, which are, I guess, reasonably well off in the scheme of things, again, there just wasn't the support there. Hibiscus and Bays, it was, 64% for keeping it as it was, yet we have had a lot of people, complain about being affected, and they have been affected. So I guess the public support isn't there. One thing I'm mindful of is not hitting people at the lower end of the scale twice. They're already getting hit with interim transport levy, and that's a regressive tax. Everyone recognise that. Any alterations to the UAGC then really hits them again. So I don't think that's fair. And I guess over and above all of that, and this is really my final point, is that the sums of money involved really are incredibly insignificant in the scheme of things for the beneficiaries. So, for instance, again, if we look at the 750k property, which is probably those properties that are worth over $1 million now, they're going to be $8 a year better off. I mean, geez, that's not going to go anywhere near addressing the sorts of expectations that altering this build up. It is a bit more significant for people down the bottom end. They're going to be paying nearly $20 more. But I guess you might say that's not great. But when it's added to the transport levy, it starts to compound a bit. So I guess, Madam Chair, what I'm saying is basically, despite the very valid concerns that people have got that have moved this, it hasn't got public support. the sums of money involved aren't all that significant when it's all said and done. It doesn't materially alter things, and it really does show the the kind of bind the council is in terms of robbing Peter to pay Paul, and that's basically what a number of these amendments today just propose to do.
Thank you. Councillor